Welcome to the Emancipated Mind Show. My name is Anneshia Freeman. I'm also known as the locksmith because I make keys for locks in the mind. I'm an award-winning master-level therapist, and I also have an MBA. I'm the creator of a cognitive restructuring program entitled The Lies That Bind. This show exposes and challenges dysfunctional unconscious beliefs that cause people to engage in self-defeating behaviors repeatedly despite the consequences. This show is streamed live via Facebook and YouTube every Thursday from 7 o'clock p.m. to 7:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, welcome to the Emancipated Mind Show. Hello, my name is Anneshia Freeman. I'm also known as the locksmith because I make keys for locks in the mind. Welcome to episode 20 of the Emancipated Mind Show. This is a show that addresses the root causes of many problems in people's lives. Problems such as low self-esteem, procrastination, self-sabotage, people-pleasing, dysfunctional relationships, perfectionism, addictions, codependency, and unrealistic expectations. Tonight's topic is process amnesia, which goes up under the umbrella of unrealistic expectations. So process amnesia is a term I created, and I'm going to define the term for you. So I made this up, but it's a real problem. And I'm also going to talk about the dysfunctional unconscious belief tonight that produces process amnesia. So let me read my definition of that term. So process amnesia is a debilitating condition in which the afflicted individual forgets the process by which he or she acquired certain information. The person stricken with this malady also forgets the process by which he or she internalized or mastered the policies and procedures for proper application of the information. A major symptom of process amnesia is harshly criticizing and belittling others who are in the early stages of information acquisition. So that is my definition of process amnesia. So process amnesia is supported by a dysfunctional unconscious belief. And here's the belief: other people should automatically possess certain information because you do, and if they don't, then they are stupid. This is what I term as a dysfunctional unconscious villain-based belief. Now, in my work and on my live shows, I talk about victim-based beliefs and villain-based beliefs. So the victim-based beliefs are my blue cognitive restructuring cards, and the villain-based beliefs are my red cognitive restructuring cards. So the belief I'm going to talk about tonight that produces process amnesia is under the category of a villain-based belief. Now, there's more than one. There's more than one unconscious belief that generates process amnesia, but I'm only going to talk about one tonight. I'm going to do a series of video trainings soon where I discuss about 10 dysfunctional unconscious beliefs that produce process amnesia. So first, tonight, I'm going to talk about the implantation process. Whenever you hear me use the terms lies, issues, unaddressed issues, or the buttons that people push, as I use those terms interchangeably, I'm referring to the same thing: dysfunctional unconscious beliefs that cause people to engage in self-defeating behaviors repeatedly, despite what they consciously know they should do. So if you're just joining me, the topic tonight is process amnesia, and I'm going to talk about the unconscious belief that produces it. The belief is other people should automatically possess certain information because you do. And if they don't, then they are stupid or incompetent. Because I'm also going to talk about how this belief affects people in their professional lives. So first, I'm going to describe the implantation process. These types of beliefs are usually implanted into a person's mind during the formative years. I say usually because there are exceptions to the rule, but most of the programming that happens in people's unconscious minds it happens during the formative years, whether you're talking about dysfunctional beliefs or functional beliefs. And so the main two ways that the beliefs are implanted is via observation and how the person is treated. So for this particular lie or issue, one of the ways that it can be implanted into a child's mind during the formative years is via observation. If a child observes people belittling others for not possessing the exact same information they possess, the lie can be implanted via observation. So another way is what I call double programming. So let's say the child himself or herself is being critiqued or belittled for not possessing the exact same information that others possess, information the child has not been taught. The child would internalize the victim version of the belief. Version of the belief is you are expected to possess information automatically that you were never taught. But while the child is internalizing the victim belief, he or she is also observing the person or persons who's mistreating him or her. So a person can internalize the victim belief and the villain belief at the same time. Yes, a person can be afflicted by both beliefs. And so I just wanted to make that point, but I'm going to be focusing on the villain version of that belief tonight that produces process amnesia. And so I'm going to start by giving a few examples of this disorder. So some people and how it affects people in their adult lives. So some people harshly criticize others for not possessing certain basic living skills. So I've used this example before in some of my live streams, but it goes very well with this process amnesia. And so one particular person that I know told a story about how she was talking to someone who stayed at a recovery house that she managed, and she was telling the person, she was asking the person more or less, chastising to a certain extent the person for not putting her clothes into the dresser drawers that were in her room. She had all of her clothes in plastic bags, garbage bags on the floor. And so when she was telling the woman, all you have to do is put these clothes in the drawer, the young lady was saying, well, I've never had a drawer. I've never lived in a house where we had drawers. We slept on the floor. We had mattresses and we had our clothes in bags and things. And so the young lady who was saying this had tears in her eyes. So the manager of the recovery house said, okay, let me show you. And she realized at that point that there's some people who haven't been taught what others consider basic living skills. So she dumped all the plastic bags on the bed and helped the lady separate her different, her tops from her underwear, from other articles of clothing, and told her which clothing would go in drawers and which ones she could hang up in the closet, because some people have not been taught the basics of how to live. And so a lot of times people who have process amnesia, and I'm not criticizing people with process amnesia, I'm going to give you some examples of me operating with that with that issue until I recognized and learned what I was doing, until I was able to conquer the dysfunctional belief that was producing, that behavior, expecting other people to automatically possess the same information I possess, whether I had any information, any knowledge that they were taught that what I know or not. And so some people were never taught how to talk appropriately. So some people were raised in environments where individuals spoke fluent profanity. And in those environments, They considered that type of language to be appropriate. I'm a person in long-term recovery, and what that means is I have over 22 years clean from drugs and alcohol. But when I learned how to navigate the subcultures in Detroit, Michigan, when I was in active addiction, I had to learn how to talk like the people who were there, or else I would have been targeted. And so some people were raised in that environment. I had to learn how to adapt. I never assimilated, but I did adapt so that I could navigate those environments. But some people were raised there, and that was the way they were taught to interact or communicate with people. Some people were never taught how to show love and concern. They were raised in environments in which people were emotionally unavailable or just didn't know how to express love and warmth. And so they were taught that this is how you treat people close to you. You don't hug, you don't say I love you, you don't be kind to them. You only show them attention when they're doing something wrong. Some people were raised like that. So people who have process amnesia, who struggle with the belief that other people should possess the exact same information they possess, they often encounter individuals who act a certain way or talk a certain way, and they critique those people. They judge them, they criticize them because they put that unrealistic expectation on them to possess the exact same information that they possess. And that is process amnesia, and it is supported by this dysfunctional unconscious belief. Other people should automatically possess certain information because you do, and if they don't, then they are stupid or incompetent, and that is not the case. Everything we know, we were taught at some point in time. None of us were born with this large database of information. We were all born as blank slates. Everything we know now, we learned at some particular point in time. Someone had to teach us how to use the bathroom. And we didn't do so well early in the potty training stages. We did not get it right the first time. It was a process. Someone taught us how to use a spoon. And we didn't do so well when we first was given a spoon to use to eat food with. We probably had oatmeal on our forehead. We probably flung it up against the wall. Learning is a process. And so a lot of times process amnesia causes individual to do what I call shoulding on people, SHOULD-ING. Well, you should know how to do this. You should know how to act a certain way. You should know how to talk a certain way. But if we know how to talk in a particular manner, if we know how to do certain things, we were taught those things at some point in time. But for some of us, we learned so early or so long ago that we forgot that we were initially provided certain information, and then we were taught how to apply that information. And we had an opportunity to practice applying that information over and over and over and over and over. And we observed other people applying that information over and over and over and over until it became like second nature. So it's easy to meet someone and think, well, you should know how to do A, B, or C, without realizing everyone hasn't had the same experiences. They haven't been exposed to the same information. They haven't been around the same types of people that some of us have been around, who demonstrated how to use that information, that didn't teach the policies or demonstrate the policies and procedures for how to properly apply that information. And that is when process amnesia comes into play. And so I have a master's in social work, and I also have a master's in business administration, and I work with a lot of professionals. And so I do trainings, I do video trainings, podcasts, live trainings, in virtual trainings, where I help people see how these unconscious beliefs affect individuals, companies, and organizations. So people in their professional lives, this issue, process amnesia, can affect a person in their professional life. So if a person struggles with this issue doesn't stay in the car when they go to work. It would be nice if it did, or when they log on. A lot of people work virtually now. This issue doesn't stay in the other room when someone logs on to work. It comes to work with people. So I'm going to give a few examples of this issue, process amnesia, in the workplace. So let's say a manager, a supervisor, or a leader struggles with this dysfunctional unconscious belief. This belief will cause a leader to expect his or her staff to possess information that the leader is being paid to give. And so I'll give an example. I was talking with a young man years ago, and he was talking about his first day at a new job. And so his boss asked him to go into the supply room and get a particular part that someone was trying to buy. And so the person, this person's first day, and they hadn't been taught about the supply room and how it was arranged, how it was organized. So this person ran to the back of the room, and this room had rows and rows and rows of bins that were on a large, on these shelves, and there was all these different bins that had numbers. It didn't even have the name of the part. It had numbers on the top of them. So this person is running up and down the aisles, looking into the bins to see, what type of parts is in this section, and then finally, this new person, this new employee found the particular part. And when he brought it out to his boss was like, "Oh my goodness, that sure took you a long time." And so the new employee is like, okay. And so that means that's an example of a person, an employer who was struggling with process amnesia. So I'm going to read the definition again. Process amnesia is a debilitating condition in which the afflicted individual forgets the process by which he or she acquired certain information. The boss, he forgot that, okay, I come here every day. I know that room like the back of my hand. I'll set up the system, or I had someone set up the system, but I'm very aware of where all the parts are. I'm aware what those numbers mean on each bin, but this is a new person that I have not taught. So that boss was operating out of process amnesia. So the person stricken with this malady also forgets the process by which he or she internalized or mastered the policies and procedures for proper application of the information. A major symptom of process amnesia is harshly criticizing and belittling others who are in the early stages of information acquisition. So I have 4 college degrees. I have a associate's in computer applications technology, a bachelor's in business, a master's in business administration, and a master's in social work. And I have had some excellent professors over the course of my 4 degrees. One of my undergrad, and I'm making this point for a reason, one of my undergrad professors for my business degree who talked economics, I forget if it was micro or macro, one of them, but he broke down, I think it was micro, or was it macro? It's a long time ago. He broke down supply and demand so well. I wanted to give him a standing ovation in the classroom, but I thought it might have looked strange, so I did it. But So I want to make the point that I've had some excellent professors. I've also had some professors who struggled with process amnesia. I could recognize it because even before I got my MSW, my master's in social work, that was the last degree I got. I had worked out as a certified counselor for years, specializing in cognitive restructuring. So I was very versed in coding unconscious beliefs in real time. So I was able to code my professors, the few that had process amnesia. It wasn't all of them. Like I said, I had some excellent professors, but I had some who struggled with this issue. I don't know if they were good professors or not, because this issue affected the way they taught the class. And so I remember one professor in particular, the man was brilliant. And I got everything I needed from him because his facial expressions, his vocal tones, his voice inflection, his body language did not trigger me, but he triggered the rest of the classroom. And how do I know? Because I was observing. I'm a researcher by nature. So I was sitting there. It was the first day of this particular class. It was the hardest class for that particular program. And he started the first day of class off by telling a story about a question that someone asked him that made him classify that person as stupid, ignorant. And he told this story with so much disdain in his voice. And I was like, wow. And so I'm looking at my other classmates and I saw this, they were looking like, oh no, right? Because he was more or less telling them, if you ask me a question and you're demonstrating that you don't have certain information that I have, I'm going to classify you as ignorant. And it wasn't just in the context of the example that he used. He actually acted a little put off. More than a little. He acted upset when people asked questions, but I asked every question I needed. I didn't monopolize the class asking, too many questions, because I did my due diligence and I read. I graduated summa cum laude, all of my degrees. So I'm one of them overachievers, type A people. So I didn't have to ask a whole lot of questions because I read my chapters and took notes and everything else. But if I needed to ask a question, I asked a question and he would be like, yes, Miss Freeman, you have another question. I was like, yes, I do. I most certainly do. And I would ask my question and I got the information I needed because I understood it wasn't anything personal. I knew that his facial expressions and vocal tone had nothing to do with me personally. It had to do with this dysfunctional unconscious belief. It had to do with the fact that he struggled with process amnesia. And I'm not trying to criticize, care to assassinate him. So let me give you an example of when I, in the past, operated out of this dysfunctional belief. So years ago, when I was early in the process of my cognitive restructuring, I'm the first client of my program. My program, The Lies That Buy. Let me show you my workbook. That's the name of my program. My award-winning cognitive restructuring program. Early, when I was in the early stages of working on myself and developing the program, I struggled with process amnesia. In fact, I'm what we call in my program VV ambidextrous, meaning I could operate out of a victim lie at 9 o'clock and switch to a villain lie at 9:02. And so at the time, I was raising my daughter, who was a teenager at the time. She's 30 now, but at the time she was a teenager, and I taught her my program. And so I had regained custody of her when I got clean. It was in recovery. And so I knew that she struggled with a lot of the same dysfunctional beliefs I had, because even though I didn't raise her the first 12 years of her life, she was with my family because of my active addiction. She was with my family. And a lot of these beliefs get passed from generation to generation via maltreatment and observation. And so part of my deprogramming and reprogramming of her belief system was every morning before she left for school, before the school bus would come, I would have her go get her belief system cards, because even though she had her set, she was a teenager. She wasn't thinking about these cards. And so I would have her spread out the cards like this. I would spread out. I would spread them out, and I would have her randomly pick one. And when she would pick one, I would have her read the lie or the dysfunctional belief. I would have her tell me, how do you believe a person could be programmed with this belief? Because I had already had her read information that let her know how the unconscious mind is programmed. And so she would tell me how a person could have been programmed with that belief. Then she would have to give me one example of that belief affecting a person in their either teen or adult life, in their adolescenthood or their adult life. She would give me the example, and then I would have her read the functional belief on the back of the card. So my daughter was very well, versed in my program material. And so one day I called her. I was on my way home from work. I was working on my undergrad degree in business, and I was receiving an award. It was a lot of us receiving awards for our GPA, for our academic achievement. And so I called home, and I asked my daughter, I said, I told her, I said, I'm getting ready to come pick you up. We're going to go to a dinner for this award I'm receiving at a country club. And so I said, be dressed, because I'm only going to have enough time to run in and change my clothes, and then we're going to have to leave. And she said, okay. So when I got home, she had on jeans and a t-shirt. She had on blue jeans and a t-shirt. And I'm like, you do not wear blue jeans and a t-shirt to a country club. And she looked at me, and she had tears in her eyes. She looked hurt. And I realized in that moment that I had triggered or activated. And that's what we call it in my program. When someone uses a facial expression, a vocal tone, a voice inflection, a body language, or, just the way they say something, the wording that they use. That's what we call it. That's the activation code. So that's how you push the button. These issues, I also call them the buttons people push. So she told me, I asked her, when I saw the tears in her eyes, I realized what I did. I realized that I had been operating out of process amnesia. So I asked her, I said, what belief did I trigger? And she told me that I had triggered the belief, the victim version. See, I was operating out of the villain version of the belief when I was upset because she didn't automatically know how to dress to go to a country club. I was acting out of this dysfunctional belief. Other people should automatically possess certain information because you do. And if they don't, then they are stupid. I didn't call her stupid. I didn't use negative descriptors with her, but my vocal tone called her stupid. My vocal tone said you should know how to dress to go to a country club. I was operating out of process amnesia. And based on how I spoke to her when I said, you don't wear jeans or a t-shirt to a country club, the way I spoke to her triggered this belief, because I asked her. I said, what belief did I trigger? She said, you triggered that you are expected to possess certain information automatically that you were never taught. I triggered the victim version of the belief because I was operating out of the villain version. That is an example of me operating out of process amnesia. So when I just gave the example of one of my professors operating out of that issue, I'm not harshly judging him because I've struggled with that issue. And so I'm just giving an example. He really was a very brilliant man. And I don't know if other people in the class got what they needed from him. I did, because his vocal tone and voice inflection didn't bother me. And by the end of the semester, he was just rolling his eyes and smiling at me because he saw I was completely unbothered by his attitude when I asked a question. So I'm going to give a few more examples of leaders of this issue in the workplace and professional settings. So let's say you have a manager, a leader, supervisor who struggles with this dysfunctional unconscious belief. If they train people, sometimes people who struggle with process amnesia, they will present the training like it's a refresher course for people who already have the basic information and skill set for the position. And a lot of times the trainings that's not what who they're training. They're training novices, some people who are new to the industry, right? Or they'll conduct their trainings with condescending facial expressions, vocal tones, voice inflection, and body language. Or they may act irritated or upset during the training when someone asks questions. So I'll give another example. I did a training at a company a while back, right before the pandemic came into full effect. And I was doing the training for supervisors and managers at this company. And so one of the problems that they talked about was that they had these very large, expensive machines that the staff kept breaking, and it was costing the company a lot of money. And so during the training, I talked about process amnesia. I talked about other dysfunctional unconscious beliefs. And during that, and I threw myself under the bus. I gave examples of me, expecting people to possess information automatically because I did, and me acting irritated if people ask questions. I threw myself under the bus, which made the people in the training feel comfortable admitting that they struggle. And so the supervisors and managers there, a few of them started saying, "Oh, wow, I have this issue." And they acknowledged that they would act upset when the new employees would ask them questions. First, they acknowledged that they weren't training the new staff how to operate those large machines properly. They were running through the instructions real fast, like it was a refresher course for someone who already knew how to operate the machine and just needed to brush up. They ran through the material, and then when the new staff would come up to them later and hey, can I ask you a question? Some of them would be like, what do you want? I'm busy. What? And so the new employees were like, never mind. It's okay. And they went back to the machine trying to figure out how to work it because they hadn't been trained properly. And I'm sure at some point, when the machine was breaking, they would hear a pop or something, and they would probably look over to one of the managers or the supervisor and want to go tell them, I think I did something wrong. I just heard something go pop. I don't think the machine was supposed to go pop. But that attitude, they had the supervisors and managers, because of this belief, and there's a few other that's involved, a few other dysfunctional unconscious beliefs, they had this unapproachable attitude, so the new staff would keep using the machine that had already popped. So now you're using a damaged machine, causing more damage. And these machines, based on what they told me at the training, was very expensive. So during the training, when the managers and the owners of the company were at that training too, and they didn't get overly upset with the managers, because I was looking at the owners and they were sitting there like, okay, I think I struggle too. So they couldn't get upset about their supervisors and managers. A lot of times it's a culture. Some companies, the whole culture has been created by certain dysfunctional unconscious beliefs. So let me give you a few examples of some other dysfunctional beliefs involved in a situation like that. People have to figure everything out by themselves. People have to get it right the first time. People are barely tolerable and nerve-wracking, because that's how they were acting when the new employees would try to approach them with a question. That's how my professor, the one I talked about, that had process amnesia, that's how he acted when people would ask questions like, like people were getting on my nerve. How dare you ask a question in this class that you paid $1,500 to be in? But the company benefited from the staff acknowledging, the leaders acknowledging that they struggled, because then they understood, the real problem is not that these machines are breaking. That's a symptom. The real problem is that we have staff, people in leadership position, who struggle with dysfunctional unconscious beliefs that hurt the bottom line. Every last one of these unconscious beliefs. And this is a set of the 100 most commonly seen victim lies and a set of the 100 most commonly seen villain lies. And so every last one of these beliefs, make demands on people's time and money. And because I have an MBA and an MSW, not only can I code the beliefs, but I also can quantify. I have done case studies when I was working on my MBA where I was quantifying. First, I coded the dysfunctional beliefs that were involved in the problems that happened in the case study that we had to analyze and write reports about. But I quantified how much money those dysfunctional unconscious beliefs were costing the company. I have a workbook that I wrote called My Unaddressed Issues Make My Budget and My Schedule. I've actually trained some financial literacy counselors in how to use that workbook along with the belief system cards to help people that they're working with when they're providing them information. Because no matter how much information you give people about financial literacy, budgeting, and things of that nature, if they have unconscious beliefs, and most of us do to a certain degree, some more than others, those unconscious beliefs will still make demands on their money. And so I'm going to read the functional belief that challenges the lie, this lie that produces process amnesia. Other people should automatically possess certain information because you do, and if they don't, then they are stupid. I'm going to read the functional belief that challenges this lie in general, and then I'm going to read a functional belief that challenges the way this lie affects individuals in their professional lives. Intelligence is relative. What that means is that when a person is exposed to a certain environment and taught the policies and procedures of that setting, then that person is knowledgeable in that world. If a person from upper class society went into the hood for some reason, he or she would be ignorant of the policies and procedures of the subcultures that exist there. Just because a person knows something like how to be respectful, loving, and caring doesn't mean that everyone was nurtured like that and taught how to show love and concern for others. Just because a person knows how to eat right and exercise doesn't mean that others were taught how to do that. Stop judging and start helping. Or keep your opinions to yourself. Be grateful you know what you know, but understand you were taught what you know. If you must do something, share information with others. Some people are seeking answers. So now I'm going to read a functional belief that challenges the way this lie that produces process amnesia. I'm going to read a functional belief that challenges the way this lie affects individuals in their professional lives. This dysfunctional belief is costing companies and organizations money. Talented, gifted people will leave if they are not properly trained and or they have unrealistic expectations placed on them to possess information that has not been properly communicated. This issue has been known to afflict trainers and professors. Students have expressed that they don't feel comfortable asking questions in certain professors' classes because they receive snide remarks, looks of exasperation, or looks of disdain. This lie is the foundation for a disorder known as process amnesia. And I've defined that disorder repeatedly during this episode. Any information that an individual possesses, he or she acquired that information at some point in time. Not only did that person acquire the information, he or she had to internalize over time the policies and procedures for operationalizing that information. This issue can be conquered after its existence is acknowledged. So that's all for this episode 20 for the Emancipated Mind Show. If you would like more information about my work, I'm going to put the link to my website in the comment section. I'm going to put the link to my store page where you can purchase both sets of my cognitive restructuring cards. They're sold together. They come with this workbook and you can purchase it. I also have other workbooks, such as the adult reenactment of the childhood scripts that helps individuals unpack. It helps people identify these negative scripts and patterns from their childhood that they have been unconsciously reenacting. It also provides them with tools, real tools, to help them write a new script, a more functional script. On my website store page, you can also purchase this workbook. My unaddressed issues make my budget and my schedule. You can purchase this workbook with the card set. So you could either purchase this combination, this workbook and my card set, or you can purchase this combination, this workbook and my card set, or you can purchase this one and then later only purchase this workbook. I have the option to purchase the workbook individually or with the card sets. And what's the value for you? One of these dysfunctional unconscious beliefs can cost you thousands of dollars. I worked with a woman one time for 4 weeks, and week 4, she came to my group. This is what I was doing, in-person counseling sessions. Group sessions. She came to my office. She said, Anneshia, I saved $500 this month by not obeying. You have to assume the responsibilities of others, which is one of those dysfunctional, unconscious, victim-based beliefs. And the belief that I talked about today, the belief that produces process amnesia, is costing people, company, and organizations a lot of money, directly and indirectly. So that's all for episode 20. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Take care and have a good evening. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching the Emancipated Mind Show. Join me every week live on Facebook and YouTube on Thursdays from 7 o'clock p.m. to 7:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For more information about my products and services, feel free to visit my website, AnnesiaConsulting.com, or my website, AnnesiaSpeaks.com. I can also be reached via email at afreeman@AnnesiaConsulting.com. I'll see you next week.